Alright everyone, so with Uma Musume's Cinderella Grey's second season coming up, we're gonna talk about a pretty big race that's gonna happen straight away at the beginning of season 2. So this is gonna be your spoiler warning for Uma Musume's Cinderella Grey, and also the real life result of the race, because it is based on real life. So the big event we're gonna talk about today is of course the 1988 Japan Cup, which of course involves Ogre Cab and also Tamil Cross. But there are also other horses that are really worth talking about, and the more notable ones have been turned into Uma Musume in Cinderella Grey, and those Uma Musumes are actually like Cinderella Grey exclusive designs. So they are not actually in the Uma Musume Pretty Derby game, because pretty sure they didn't have the license for these horses. But in this video, I'm going to talk about Ogre Cap, Tamil Cross of course, and also the more notable Uma Musumes that are going to be participating in the 1988 Japan Cup. So we can't start talking about the 1988 Japan Cup without talking about our main character, which is Ogre Cap. So Ogre Cap was born on March 27th of 1985 at the Funao Inaba breeding farm, and his father is Dancing Cap and his mother is White Narubi. So Ogre Cap made his debut in May 1987 at the Kasamatsu racecourse in Gifu Prefecture. So with the name of being the Ashen Beast, you might have thought he would have won his first race, but no, actually he lost to March Tosho in his first race. And in the Uma Musume Cinderella Grey anime, March Tosho is actually Fujimasa March. So Fujimasa March is based on March Tosho, and in the anime, Ogre Cap also lost to Fujimasa March. But after that, Ogre Cap actually won his next 2 races, but then at his 4th race, he actually lost to March Tosho again, and those 2 races would actually be the only races that Ogre Cap has lost in Kasamatsu, because out of all 12 races that Ogre Cap has in Kasamatsu, he has only lost 2 races, and those 2 races he only lost to March Tosho, and that is depicted in Cinderella Grey, where Fujimasa March is the absolute main rival that Ogre has in Kasamatsu. And then, as we all know, Ogre will be transferred from Kasamatsu to Tokyo, which is a national race, and a lot of people at that time were very skeptical if Ogre was going to be able to match the national level standards that the graded races has in Tokyo, in Kyoto, in Hanshin. But Ogre Cap would just blow these doubts out of the water, with her winning every single race that she has in the national region, including the March 6, 1988 Pegasus Stakes, the March 27, 1988 Mainichi High, the May 8, 1988 Mainichi Broadcast Swan Stakes, and then the June 5th, 1988 New Zealand Cup, the July 10th, 1988 Takamatsu no Miya High, and finally the 1988 October 9th Mainichi Okan, where she won against Cyrus Simbly, although at that point Cyrus Simbly was, let's just say, a shell of his former self. Also, if you want me to talk about Cyrus Simbly, be sure to comment down in the video description, because I do think Cyrus Simbly is one of the most tragic and the most abused horses in like the JRA history. So that all leads up to, well, of course, the October 30th 1988 Tenno Show, which is also notably his first ever G1 race, where Ogre Cap actually lost to Tamil Cross, and that really just sparked the Ashen horse rivalry, because people at that point were saying that gray horses can't run. And the second was Ogre just completely blowing every single national race out of the water, like just winning for 6 straight matches, just blowing everyone's doubts out of the water. And people at that point were already calling her the Ashen Beast, the Grey Monster. And not only did the October 30th 1988 Tenno show that Ogre could be beaten, but it also showed that gray horses can definitely fucking run. And that will be leading up to what we're going to talk about today, which is the November 27th 1988 Japan Cup. Alright, so we're going to be going into the anime and manga territory. So again, spoiler warning for the anime and manga and also the real life race if you don't want to know. So let's get into it. So there have been new key visuals that has been released for Uma Musume Cinderella Grey for 2 to 3 weeks by now. So these 5 Uma Musumes on the screen right now are the 5 most prominent horses that are going to be participating in that race. And of course, these are based on the real life horses that have participated in the 1988 Japan Cup. So, let's go ahead and talk about these 5 Uma Musumes first. So starting from the very left, that Uma Musume is gonna be called Tony Bianca. So Tony Bianca is heavily based on the real life horse Tony Bin. So Tony Bin was born on the 7th of April of 1983, and Tony Bin is actually an Irish bred thoroughbred racehorse who competed in Europe for his Italian owner from a base in Milan and later on became a leading sire in Japan. Fun fact, Tony Bin's trainer is called Luigi Camici, very Italian name by the way. And Tony Bin has actually won 6 G1 race in his entire career. So Tony Bin's race career actually started, kind of unimpressive with his 2nd and 3rd year not winning any major races, mostly coming in 2nd and 3rd in major G1 races in Italy. But at the age of 4, Tony Bin actually won some of Italian's most prestigious Group 1 events. Let's hope I don't butcher these names, including the Gran Premio del Jockey Club, the Premio Presidente della Repubblica, and the Gran Premio di Milano. And he actually won the della Repubblica and the di Milano 2 times, both in 1987 and 1988. And Tony Bin actually also won the 1988 Prix de la Triomphe, which is France's most prestigious race, and it's the race that Japan has been vying for half a century by now. So Tony Bin is actually a very impressive horse. And actually when Tony Bin retired, he was sold to Zenya Yoshida for $4 million, and he stood as a breeding stud at the Shadai Stallion Station in Hokkaido. And with Tony Bin being such a successful horse, outside of Japan, he would of course, just like Sunday Silence, sire a lot of great horses, including Air Groove, which sired Admire Groove, and Admire Groove sired Duramente. Jungle Pocket, a winning ticket as well. Some Uma Musumes that you guys might know. Also Vega, which is the mother of Admire Vega. So Tony Bin had a very impressive racing career and also a very impressive stud career as well. And apparently Tony Bin also has a habit of, sticking out his tongue and, letting humans gently pull on it as a trait. Something that would, be inherited by Jungle Pocket, and something that Orphev would, do recently. I do think these horses are connected in some kind of cosmic fucking mythology way. I'm not gonna lie. Alright, up next we have Obey Your Master. I mean, damn, I'm definitely obeying her. So, Obey Your Master's real life name is actually Paid the Butler. So, first off, let me just rant a little bit. Like, who made up these names? By the way, who made up these names for these horses? We got Skippy Toilet, we got Fortnite Dance. Now we got Pay the Butler. What's next? Fucking Natural Bottom. So Pay the Butler was born on the 20th of February of 1984 at the Robin Scully's Cloverleaf Farm in Kentucky. So while being bred in Kentucky, he actually began his racing career in France. So as a 2-year-old, Pay the Butler actually raced in France, but failed to win in 5 races, although he finished 3rd in the Prix Herbadger at Masson's Lafitte Racecourse, and recorded his first victory when he won the Grand Prix de Strasbourg on 28th of May. And I can't really find a lot of information on the Grand Prix de Strasbourg, so I'm just gonna say it's like an ungraded race right now. So his 2 to 3 year seasons really didn't result in a lot of successful wins. But after his 2nd and 3rd season, Pay the Butler actually returned to the United States for his 4th season after racing 3 more times at the early parts of 1988 in France, and he would finally be able to win his first graded race, which is the Grade 2 Red Smith Handicap in Queens, New York, and he won by a neck from Equalize. I'm gonna try as hard as I could to find a picture of the horse, but That will be Peter Baller's first graded win in his career, and he would actually run quite well in the United States, finishing second in both the Bowling Green Handicap and the Man o' War Stakes. And after that, Peter Baller would be sent to Japan to contest in the 1988 Japan Cup. And in that race, Peter Baller will actually have the odds of winning of 14.9 to 1, and he was the 9th favorite of that race, with Tamil Cross being the first, Ogre being the third, and Tony Bin being the second favorite. So he wasn't really the most favorite to win that race, but somehow, some way, Peter Baller actually beat Tamil Cross and he won the 1988 Japan Cup. And Peter Baller will actually come back again in 1989 to participate in the Japan Cup of that year, and he wouldn't be able to race against Tamil Cross because at that point Tamamo was actually retired, but he would be able to have his rematch against Ogre Cap. And in the 1989 Japan Cup, Peter Baller would actually finish in third place, and Peter Baller would actually retired and become a breeding stallion in Japan, but he would unfortunately die in 1991 with only one season as being a stud. So next up we got Moonlight Lunacy. So Moonlight Lunacy's real name is actually Moon Madness, and Moon Madness was born on 1983 and is a British thoroughbred racehorse, and his career lasted between September 1985 until November of 1988. And Moon Madness is actually a very successful racehorse where he ran in 24 races and won 10 races. And Moon Madness recorded his most important success when winning the classic St. Leger Stakes as a 3-year-old in 1986, which is also the same year where he also won the King George V Stakes and the Scottish Derby. And he continued to race for the next 2 seasons in major middle distance and staying races. So you can say he's one of the best stayers in England, kind of like Major McQueen, with his victories including the Grand Prix des St. Cloud, where he actually won against Tony Bin in that race. More notably, El Condo Pasa also won that race in 1999. And Moonlight Lunacy actually participated in 2 Japan Cups. He actually participated in the 1987 Japan Cup and also the 1988 Japan Cup, which would be represented in the Uma Musume Cinderella Grey anime. So in the manga, Moonlight Lunacy actually came from the same family as Tony Bianca, which is Tony Bin. And that's because in reality, both horses shared the same grandfather, which is Calamone. We also have to talk a little bit about Moonlight Lunacy's design. So Moonlight Lunacy's design actually has a little bit, the traditional English noblewoman dresses. And I think the inspiration for the outfit is based on the horse's real life owner, Lavina, which is the Duchess of Norfolk. So an actual noble lady owned the horse, so that really explains why her looks in the anime or in the manga is just like a noble lady. So next horse is gonna be Michelle My Baby, and her real name is My Big Boy. My Big Boy, My Big Boy. So with a name like that, you would expect him to be a horse that is relatively bigger than your average horse. But to be honest though, he's actually isn't too gigantic, because he was around 500 kilograms. And for comparison, Hishi Agabono heaviest weight was 568 kilograms during his racing career. And to be honest, like Gold Chip during his racing career, he was averaging around 500 to 510 kilograms. So I don't really think that a name has any relevance to the horse's actual size and weight. If you want to call a horse My Big Boy, you better fucking hope that horse is like a big boy, 600 kilograms, like maybe around the size of your mom. So I actually did try to find some information about My Big Boy, and surprisingly, My Big Boy doesn't really have a Wikipedia page, so I don't think he is a very well-known horse. But what I can find is that My Big Boy was born on May 6 of 1983 at the Ogden Mills Phillips breeding farm. His father is our hero and his dam is pretty special. So My Big Boy actually ran in a lot of fucking races. So he ran in 50 races. He got 10 first place, 12 second place, and 10 third place, with a total earning of $1.196 million US dollars. With his 2 major wins being the August 14th in 1988 Bernard Barge Handicap Grade 1 race, and also the Pan American Handicap Grade 2 race. And one thing to note is that my big boy is also a gelding horse. So he actually won a grade 1 race. So I don't really know why Wikipedia didn't, include any information about this horse, because 50 race starts with 10 first places, 12 second places, and 10 third place. I feel like it's pretty goddamn impressive. And in the Japan Cup, he actually got 4th place as well. So maybe not the most achieving horse, but still a very, solid horse. Alright, last but not least, we got Ellerslie Pride. And Ellerslie Pride's real name is Bone Crusher. And Bone Crusher was a New Zealand racehorse and was widely known as the People's Champion and was a beloved horse. So Bone Crusher was born on the 17th of September of 1982, whose father is Pag-asa and mother is Imitation. And Bone Crusher was widely admired in both Australia and New Zealand and won in a total of 10 races, including the 1985 Bayer Classic, the 1985 New Zealand Derby, the 1986 and 1988 Air New Zealand Stakes, the 1986 Tancred Stakes, the 1986 Australian Derby, the 1986 Caulfield Stakes, the 1986 WS Cox Plate, the 1986 Underwood Stakes, and also the 1987 Australian Cup. So a lot of wins, and with a total earning of around 674,000 New Zealand dollars, or around 1.6 million Australian dollars. And he'll be crowned the Australian Horse of the Year at 1987 and will be included in the New Zealand Racing Hall of Fame. And in total, Bone Crusher raced 44 races for 18 wins, 5 second places, and 12 third place. Bone Crusher would actually make his first debut at August of 1984, where he won 3 of his first 5 starts as a juvenile. And Bone Crusher would scale his greatest heights in the 1986 Cox Plate, where he would prevail in the so-called race of the century with another New Zealand champion, Waverley Star. Both horses would go to war at the 600-meter mark and separate themselves from the rest of the pack, with Bone Crusher narrowly prevailing in a head-to-head struggle that caller Bill Collins at the time summed up with the famous line, "Bone Crusher races into equine immortality." So after winning the Cox Plate, Bone Crusher would actually be scheduled to participate in the 1986 Japan Cup, but Bone Crusher would unfortunately contract a virus in Tokyo, nearly losing his life, so he had to withdraw from that race. And the next year, when he recovered from the illness, he won the 1986 Australian Cup and was named Horse of the Year in New Zealand and Australia for the 1986 and 1987 season. And he was actually the first horse to be awarded both titles. And he also was a government-appointed equine ambassador for New Zealand in 1986. Yo, since when does horse have power in the government? I think we need to make sure that gold ships stay away from that. And then Bone Crusher would actually finally be able to participate in the 1988 Japan Cup. But unfortunately, at that point, he would only be able to reach 8th place in that race. Now I'm thinking that maybe he would have won the 1986 Japan Cup when he was still, younger and faster. And Bone Crusher would retire on the 28th of December of 1989, and after his death, he was buried beside the saddling paddock at Ellerslie Racetrack, where he won his first race, his first group race, and all 3 of his New Zealand Group 1 races there as well. And that's where a bronze statue was set above him, which is a life-size replica of the horse. And the plaque underneath the statue says, "Bone Crusher, the pride of Ellerslie." And this is how Uma Musume Cinderella Grey pay homage to the horse, where her name in the anime is called Ellerslie Pride. Other notable Uma Musumes that participate in that race is, of course, Goat City or Goat City, and also Tamamo Cross. I'm not going to talk a lot about Tamamo Cross because I have another video, specifically for Tamamo Cross and Ogre Cap. But the short and simple story of Tamamo Cross is that Tamamo Cross is a racehorse in the end of Showa, and he broke the superstition that gray horses were not strong, winning 3 Grade 1 races in a row, including victories in both the spring and the autumn Tenno show and the Takarosa Gakinen, where he actually beat Nippon Teo. Nippon Teo is the father of Haru Urara. And he actually fought several times with Ogre Cap as, you know, the Ashin or Gray Horse Showdown, and excited the second horse racing boom in Japan. His nickname was White Lightning 2, which come from his father CB Cross. To be honest, I just call him White Lightning though, because that's what his skill in Uma Musume is. And Gold City is racehorse in the 1980s, and he had a very beautiful flaxen chestnut coat, and many fans said he was strong enough to win a G1 race. But behind, you know, all that like beautiful exterior, Gold City actually has notoriously bad mood issues, and his trainer thought his future was dependent on whether his mood would cause good or bad results. So kind of like Gold shit, where if he wanted to run, he would run. When he didn't want to run, he just wouldn't run. Gold City was actually also very terrible at waking up early, as he was known as the man of 10 a.m. in the Rito training center. Usually most horses start training at 5 to 6 a.m. Poor horses, by the way, waking up first fucking hour at the morning and just start grueling training. Like, that's crazy. He actually won a Grade 1 race, which is the Hanshin Free Yield Stakes, and after retirement, Gold City would be retrained for a riding horse, but he would conflict with other horses, so you know, he was kind of the bad bitch of the training center. So these are all the major horses or Uma Musumes that I want to talk about that participated in the 1988 Japan Cup. That Japan Cup is certainly one of the more interesting Japan Cups that I've seen, and because it will be so heavily featured in the season 2 of Cinderella Grey, it's good that like right now I will talk about this. And I'm also thinking about making a dedicated video on the anime version of the Japan Cup of Cinderella Grey, you know, kind of like a race analysis for that race. So let me know if you want to see some kind of video like that, you know, kind of like a fight analysis or a race analysis of the 1988 Japan Cup. So yeah, that's all I have to say for this 1988 Japan Cup video. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next Uma Musume video.